Dr. Mercola, and then we'll go to Jennifer, Angel, Nick, and Jordy. That'll be it for calls. You've been already holding, so I'll go to you. Dr. Joseph Mercola, if people know anything about health, anything about alternative wellness and news, they know about Dr. Mercola. He's probably the most successful, one name out there at putting out really good reference material, and also being very moderate about, the claims and things he says. Mercola.com is the most visited natural health website, averaging 14 million visitors monthly. I think it's more than that. His mission is to ignite a transformation of our fatally flawed healthcare system and to inspire people to take control of their health. And he is passionate about health and technology for most of his life. A doctor of osteopathic medicine. He treated many thousands of patients for over 20 years. In the mid-1990s, he integrated his passion for natural health with modern technology via the internet and developing the website Mercola.com to spread the word about natural ways to achieve optimal health. He has significant milestones in his mission to bring people practical solutions to their health problems. New York Times bestselling author. He's also voted the 2009 Ultimate Wellness Game Changer by the Huffington Post and has been featured in Time Magazine and everywhere else. I'm not going to go over it. He joins us now to cover the waterfront, basically. Dr. Mercola, thanks for coming on Halloween.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. I missed you out in September at the Health Liberty Awards.
Well, I would love to be able to go to stuff like that, but I'm always tied down here in the bunker. I've been trying to actually follow some of what I preach, and I've gotten a lot healthier and lost about, all total, in the last few years, about 50 pounds. But I don't look as glowing as you or some of the other folks that really take care of themselves. Let's, out of the gates, talk about Ebola. Then I want to talk about the state of labeling. I know you helped spearhead the prop that almost passed in California. There's other props. McDonald's,
Washington, and this year in Oregon and Colorado.
Yeah, so there's a lot to cover. What is your researched expert take on what's currently happening with Ebola?
Well, my belief is that, and no one knows for sure, but it's just my take on it, that it's an orchestrated effort to create a fear. That's their common strategy, create fear, to use as a justification to initiate a massive vaccination program. That's clearly the end game here. This disease is highly infectious, of course, but it's not taking out a lot of people in the United States. There's only been 2 nurses who've been infected. There's other people who are infected. In the United States, there's other people who've been infected who are coming in from Africa. So I don't think a lot of people are going to die here. I don't think it's a serious issue, but they're going to use it as leverage to initiate a massive vaccination campaign.
That's clearly what they're doing, and they've got the vaccine lined up to come, well, several vaccines for December, January, February, right as this starts to peak in Africa. Looking at it, we know that South Africa developed race-specific Ebola. They admit that. It was declassified in hearings back in the mid-90s. This Ebola clearly has mutated. It lasts longer in the body. I think people are scared of it because if it gets here and then starts to go somewhat airborne, as the Army has said, in colder weather, it can live longer, then it could be a big problem. I think it's the bleeding and the rest of it that scares people. But I agree with you. The government's response, the way they've acted, I think adds to the fear. How do you think they're going to try to roll out this forced vaccination program or this attempt to fearmonger people into doing it?
I'm not too good at projecting the future, but I do know that very confidently can tell your listeners and viewers that there's nothing to be afraid about here. Just looked at the facts. It definitely is a highly virulent virus that kills a large percentage of people in Africa, but look at the people it's killing. These are highly malnourished individuals, protein-calorie malnutrition for the most part. When you have a healthy individual, the mortality rate is going to be far less, and there's very simple ways to improve your immune system, and the most potent would be, the two most potent ones would be improving optimizing your vitamin D levels, and the ideal way is through sun exposure or a tanning bed that will do it naturally. And then if that's not possible, as it will be in the winter months, then oral vitamin D certainly. But realize that that's clearly inferior to sun exposure. And then the second one would be 80%. 80% of your immune system, Alex, is in your gut microbiome. So simple measures like stopping sugar avoiding tap water that's not been filtered because the chlorine there will easily decimate your beneficial bacteria, or bathing in a shower with chlorinated water because you could absorb more chlorine from a hot shower than you can from drinking tap water. And then having a regular sources of beneficial bacteria. I'm a big fan of fermented foods because you can get massively large doses, literally 10% of your gut microbiome population in just a few ounces. So, and you do all those together and your immune system is upregulated and you can basically eliminate just about any infection, whether it's Ebola, the flu, coughs, or colds. You won't get sick. You don't need a lot of fancy stuff. And for whatever reason, you're stressed out, you're not sleeping well, you do get sick, there's simple measures that you can do that really address this, that you don't have to rely on medications. You know, there's simple therapies like certainly liposomal vitamin C, colloidal silver, and even ozone therapy, which I did a recent interview with Dr. Robert Rowan, who went to Sierra Leone, just got back last week because the president of Sierra Leone invited him to the country to use ozone therapy to treat Ebola there. But then the drug companies got aware of it and they got kicked out last week, unfortunately. But he was able to train a lot of physicians there, and most likely some of the ozone therapy trials will start soon.
Think how powerful these drug companies are, that they can block colloidal silver, they can block ozone treatments, they can block things that are known in the government's own research to have massive effects, all because they want to be the saviors to sell the Ebola vaccine or the Ebola drugs. There's just got to be some way to break their monopoly of control.
Well, there is a way. It's just a very clear way, and that is to take control of your health. That's clearly to be empowered to understand that you don't have to rely on expensive drugs or surgeries to address the causes of disease. That there are natural options. Many of them are inexpensive or virtually free that could radically improve your ability to stay healthy and not rely on these alternatives.
It's really bizarro world, Dr. Mercola.
Yeah.
That people like Cass Sunstein, the White House regulations are, could put a paper out 6 years ago saying we should restrict free speech, and he gave an example of what was damaging speech, and he said sunshine is not good for you.
Yeah, and now the Surgeon General, who is a former dermatologist, or still is a dermatologist, but he's massively come against that and tried to integrate into the United States public health policy to avoid the sun. I mean, it's just so highly irrational.
Well, they don't want us to be well. See, you're a classy, smart guy, and you're very conservative in your approach at not being hysterical. But come on. We've got governments with all their secret lethal tests. They've been caught over and over again. When they come out and say, don't get sun, you don't need any sun, when any old-fashioned doctor would say, you're sick, go get sun, when anybody can read the thousands of studies that you've got to get moderate sun or you'll basically get cancer, they want us sick, dying, or dead, I guess.
Well, I'm not sure that's the ultimate motivation of most physicians. I think that, having been trained as a physician, I could...
No, I don't think the average one. I'm talking about the big policymakers.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there's definitely a consistent effort in that direction. But the policy, who controls the policymakers? There's this revolving door of federal regulatory agencies that are bought out by lobbyists from these large corporations, frequently the drug companies, that dictate these policies.
Yeah, for those that don't know, that's a great example about in Africa not letting doctors go in with ozone systems. Look at Codex Alimentarius and the UN. It's run by the multinational corporations that run the UN board.
Yeah, and it's been successfully implemented for in large measure in Europe. And thankfully, we've got tremendously great organizations like American ANH, I believe it is. I forget what the acronym stands for, but they're using political lobbying to prevent those laws from being implemented in the United States. You cannot get, it's just insane. It's almost impossible to find a natural health care clinician in England, or even find any supplement that's useful. I mean, they're limited to vitamin D to 400 units. You'd have to take 10, 15, 20 a day to get the right dose.
And let's be clear, they jacked the price up, they cut the allowance down to almost nothing, and say, oh, you don't need iodine, oh, you don't need vitamin D, oh, you don't. Listen to these people that say you need vitamins, that you need minerals, that, but they're lowering the RDA down and down and down. What's behind that?
Well, I'm not aware that they're lowering specific RDAs, but those are just guidelines. But the key is to understand that you need healthy food. And one of my big new passions is to encourage and inspire people to really start growing their own food, even if it's something as simple as sprouts. I mean, you could have a significant portion of your food intake from sprouts, which you can raise from seed in about 7 to 10 days. So, it's organic, it's really healthy, it's bio.
Well, stay there, Dr. Mercola. We're going to come back, and I'm going to look it up, but I remember having some of the folks on that have been there reporting from Codex Alimentarius and seeing it. They are lobbying to continue to actually lower in Europe. I don't mean here, but they've done it, lower what they're saying you can basically sell on the store shelves. We'll be right back. I'm your host, Alex Jones. Dr. Mercola of Mercola.com is our guest. Stay with us. I have extended coverage for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours Monday night. Normally, InfoWars Nightly News is 30 minutes long, 7 o'clock Central. But then coming up, we're going to probably go 6 p.m. until midnight or so with the election on Tuesday. Dr. Joseph Mercola is our guest, Mercola.com. And I wanted to get him on just because from my lay research, purified water, sunshine, having enough vitamin D, getting enough sleep, and then staying away from people, that, if it starts spreading and have Ebola is the answer. But the media and the government's not saying that. They're saying, we got a vaccine. And so if you have a bunch of people that aren't prepared and it was to start spreading in these winter months when it spreads worse, then you could end up with a real problem in this country. And we had already cut you off going to break. They told me you were agreeing with my statement about Codex Alimentarius and the RDAs in Europe.
Yeah, I thought you were referring to the decrease in the U.S. I wasn't aware of that, but I certainly would agree it's probably going on in Europe. Oh, yeah,
Europe. Sure. I mean, your point is, it's been done in Europe. We know what they want. Now they're pushing it here. I don't think the average American knows that they almost banned supplements outright back in the mid-1990s. They came very close. If it wasn't for Ron Paul and activists and others, we would be up the creek.
They started the Shea Act, too.
Yes.
It was a big, important part. And now we've got the senator from Illinois, Dick Durbin, who's really the most aggressive promoter. But fortunately, most of the other congressmen don't buy it, and he hasn't been able to pass most of his legislation.
Dr. Mercola, are we reaching a tipping point where the congressmen and senators and congresswomen and the governors, they're using supplements themselves? It's like McDonald's profits are down 33%, other fast foods way down. Are we starting to reach that tipping point where even if they don't have mandatory labeling, the market's just going to do it?
I think we're getting there, getting closer and closer, especially as the economy deteriorates and there's a demand for more accountability for the resources and to make sure that you're getting what you pay for, which we certainly don't in this country, spending $3 trillion a year, and we've got miserable results. We're ranked 49th in the world for longevity. It's just not a good return on our investment. So when the economy collapses, I believe it will at some point, it's inevitable, then we're going to be facing some hard choices, and they're going to be looking for solutions that work, and these solutions that we promote work very clearly.
That's right. That's why alternative health and wellness is becoming not the alternative, but becoming dominant in many sectors. The empire will strike back, but where the people go, they can't stop us. You're not just a successful doctor, you're a successful businessman running your huge operation. I want to get your take on collapse being inevitable, because I agree with that statement. What type of collapse, Dr. Mercola?
I don't know what it will manifest, but you can't be printing trillions of dollars every year and expect not to have some consequence of that. Now, admittedly, almost all the central banks in the world are doing it too, but at some point it's got to give up. I mean, they may keep it up for another 3, 5, 10 years, but at some point it's going to collapse, and there'll be severe scenario, probably much more severe than the Depression in the 30s in the U.S. I think that's going to be look like a piece of cake compared to what's coming.
I agree. And I don't say that because it's sensational for audiences. That's what every smart person I talk to says. It's what billionaires I know say. It's what the governments are digging in for, while they try to get the public to be completely unaware of what's going on. I would think to stabilize things, they'd want to get the public ready and aware.
Well, that would be counter to their purposes. I think